You mean you haven't guessed? You don't see the family resemblance? Here's a hint. I must find the Avatar to restore my honor.
Imagine Azula's precision striking like lightning across the Avatar cycle. Terrifying, yet awe-inspiring. What if her ruthless efficiency mastered all 4 elements? We're counting down the top 10 ways Azula would revolutionize the Avatar's role. From her intense training methods to her approach to global politics, every aspect gets an electrifying Azula makeover. This countdown challenges everything we thought we knew about the Avatar. Each point will leave you questioning the very foundations of bending lore. Ready to see the Avatar world through Azula's eyes? Let's dive in and uncover how the Fire Nation princess would reshape the balance of power. Imagine for a moment Ozai's face twisted with a mix of pride and fear as he reveals a secret that changes everything. We've always known Azula as the perfect daughter, the prodigy, the one who could do no wrong in her father's eyes. But what if her exceptional abilities weren't just a result of genetics and intense training? What if they were a sign of something far greater? Picture this, Azula standing before her father in the throne room, expecting another day of accolades and assignments. But today is different. Ozai's voice trembles slightly as he speaks. Azula, there's something you need to know about your destiny. The flames surrounding his throne flicker, casting eerie shadows across the room. As Ozai reveals the truth, Azula's eyes widen in disbelief. The Avatar cycle isn't what we all thought it was. Those prodigious abilities Azula has displayed since childhood weren't just a product of her royal bloodline. They were the first manifestations of the Avatar spirit itself. For a moment, Azula's face lights up with vindication. All those years of pushing herself to the limit, of striving for perfection, they were preparation for a destiny far greater than even she could have imagined. But as quickly as that satisfaction appears, it's replaced by the weight of a world-changing revelation. Flashes of her childhood play out before us, now seen through a new lens. Remember when she first bent lightning at an age when most firebenders were still struggling with basic forms? Or how she always seemed to have an uncanny sense of her opponent's movements in battle? Were these the signs we all missed? As Azula grasps the full extent of her new role, we see the first sparks of an internal conflict. The Avatar's duty is to maintain balance in the world, to be a force for peace and harmony. But Azula's ambition, her drive for perfection and control, intensifies. If I'm the Avatar, she might be thinking, then doesn't that mean I get to decide what balance looks like? It's a chilling thought, isn't it? The idea of someone with Azula's ruthless nature and strategic brilliance wielding the power of all 4 elements. How will she approach her new role? Will she embrace the traditional peaceful approach of past avatars? Or will she use this power to reshape the world according to her own vision? The answer, as it turns out, is pure Azula. With a smirk that would make Ozai proud, she begins to outline her plans. Father, she says, her voice dripping with confidence, with the power of the Avatar, we won't just conquer the world, we'll remake it in our image. And just like that, we see the beginnings of how Azula's ruthless nature will reshape the Avatar's traditional approach. No more passive peacekeeping. No more hiding away in temples to meditate. Azula's Avatar will be proactive, decisive, and utterly unstoppable. Imagine for a moment Azula, the prodigy of fire, standing before a serene pond. Her face is set with determination, golden eyes narrowed in concentration. She extends her hand, expecting the water to bend to her will as easily as flames. But nothing happens. The water remains stubbornly still, mocking her efforts. This is where Azula's true journey as the Avatar begins, and it's not going to be the smooth ride she expected. You see, Azula's perfectionism, which has always been her greatest strength, is about to become her most formidable opponent. As she embarks on mastering the 4 elements, her rigid worldview clashes spectacularly with the very nature of bending itself. Let's break it down, shall we? First up, water bending. Water flows like life itself, uncontainable for someone built on rigid control. Azula's initial attempts are frustrating, to say the least. Where she expects to command, the water demands cooperation. Her progress is slow and painful, each small victory coming at the cost of grueling effort and mounting frustration. The princess who once bent lightning with ease now struggles with the most basic water forms, and it's taking a toll on her psyche. Now, earthbending. If Azula thought water was challenging, Earth is about to rock her world. Pun absolutely intended. Her first attempts are almost comical. Her fist slams into the inert rock, a symbol of her battle against nature itself. With each failure, her frustration grows. She pushes herself harder, training until her hands bleed and her body aches. But Earth doesn't respond to force alone, and Azula's learning this lesson the hard way. And then we come to airbending. Oh boy, you ain't seen nothing yet. Azula's attempts are like watching a caged tiger trying to soar like an eagle. She's all tension and no flow. The air stubbornly refuses to bend to her will, remaining as elusive as the concept of inner pieces to Azula. With each failure, we see cracks forming in her usually impenetrable armor of confidence. As Azula struggles with these new elements, we start to see a change in her. The pressure she puts on herself is immense. Every setback chips away at her self-image. The fear of failure, something she's never truly faced before, begins to creep in. There are moments when Azula's frustration boils over into rage, unleashing devastating firebending attacks on her surroundings. But these outbursts are followed by periods of eerie calm, where Azula retreats into herself, analyzing and strategizing with an intensity that's almost frightening. But here's the thing, despite all these challenges, Azula is still Azula. Her drive for perfection, while causing her immense struggle, also pushes her to achieve the impossible. She may not master the elements with the ease she expected, but she does make progress. And when she does succeed, the results are spectacular. Imagine Azula finally managing to create a wave, her face lit with a mix of triumph and disbelief. Or picture her raising a boulder, sweat pouring down her face, but a fierce grin of satisfaction on her lips. These moments are few and far between, but they're there, and they're incredible to witness. Azula's always been a master strategist, outmaneuvering her opponents at every turn. But what if her greatest battle isn't against any external foe, but against the labyrinth of her own mind? As she grapples with her new avatar powers, we're about to see Azula's tactical brilliance turned inward, and the results are both fascinating and terrifying. Imagine Azula's mind as a chessboard, where every piece represents a potential threat or ally. Her paranoia transforms this internal landscape into a twisted maze of suspicion and fear. Picture her eyes darting around the room during a war council, analyzing every twitch and whisper for signs of betrayal. The pressure of mastering the elements only intensifies this internal struggle. Each setback becomes another crack in her carefully constructed facade of perfection. Azula's brilliant tactical mind, once her greatest asset, now turns against her with ruthless efficiency. But here's where things get really interesting. Azula's mental state directly impacts her ability to connect with the spiritual side of being the Avatar. How can she build a bridge between worlds when her own mind is a battlefield? During meditation attempts, Azula finds herself unable to quiet her racing thoughts. The spiritual realm, which requires openness and acceptance, remains frustratingly out of reach. This creates a vicious cycle. The more Azula fails to connect spiritually, the more she doubts herself. And the more she doubts, the harder it becomes to achieve the balance necessary for spiritual connection. It's like watching a master swimmer being pulled under by a riptide. All that skill and strength rendered useless against a force they can't control. Despite this internal turmoil, Azula refuses to show weakness. On the outside, she maintains her aura of confidence and control. She pushes herself harder, trains longer, demands more from those around her. The disconnect between her outward appearance and inner reality only grows wider, creating a pressure cooker of emotions just waiting to explode. This mental battleground becomes most apparent in Azula's interactions with others. Conversations become minefields, with Azula analyzing every word, every gesture for hidden meanings and ulterior motives. Her responses grow more erratic, swinging between icy calm and barely contained fury. Those closest to her start to walk on eggshells, never sure which Azula they'll be facing from one moment to the next. The truly tragic part, Azula is not entirely wrong. Her position as the Avatar does make her a target, a potential tool for those with ambition, but her paranoia distorts this truth, amplifying it until it drowns out all reason. In her quest for control, Azula risks losing the very thing that makes the Avatar so powerful, the ability to connect with others and bring balance to the world. Imagine for a moment, Azula, the prodigy of fire, steps into the spirit world. Her confidence is palpable possible, but the ethereal realm has other plans. As she enters, the landscape shifts and warps around her, defying the physical laws she's accustomed to. Here, thoughts and emotions take on a life of their own, and for someone with as much inner turmoil as Azula, well, let's just say things are about to get interesting. Azula's initial attempts to assert her authority fall flat. The spirits don't care about Fire Nation royalty or even the Avatar's status. Instead, they start to reflect Azula's inner world back at her, and trust me, it's not a pretty sight. Now, you might be thinking, Azula's a fighter. She'll blast these manifestations away with some firebending. But here's the kicker. In this realm, her bending is useless. This isn't a physical fight. It's a battle of will and self-understanding. For someone who's spent her entire life avoiding introspection, that's terrifying. We see Azula struggling as her carefully constructed defenses start to crumble. The spirits aren't interested in her threats or strategies. They're forcing her to confront parts of herself she's long since buried, and Azula does not like what she sees. But the spirit world isn't done with her yet. Just when Azula thinks she can't take any more, she faces the ultimate test. A vision of her mother appears before her. This isn't just any memory. It's a vivid scene from her childhood. We see young Azula desperately seeking approval, while her mother looks on with a mix of fear and disappointment. The raw emotion on Azula's face is unlike anything we've seen before. As Azula grapples with this vision, we see her in a way we never have. Vulnerable, uncertain, human. It's a far cry from the perfectly poised princess we're used to. And you know what? It's absolutely riveting to watch. But don't think for a second that Azula's going down without a fight. Even in this spiritual realm, her determination shines through. She might be out of her element, but she's still Azula. She adapts, she strategizes, she pushes back against the visions that threaten to overwhelm her. As the confrontation reaches its climax, something unexpected happens. Azula, in a moment of raw honesty, admits to a truth she's never acknowledged before. And in that moment of vulnerability, something shifts. The hostile spirits around her begin to change, responding to this newfound authenticity. Now, I won't spoil the exact outcome for you, but let's just say that Azula emerges from this spiritual crucible changed, not entirely transformed. She's still Azula after all, but with a new understanding of herself and her place in the world. It's a journey that takes her from the heights of overconfidence to the depths of self-doubt and back to a place of hard-won self-awareness. Picture this, Azula, the firebending prodigy we thought we knew, stepping back into the physical world after her spiritual odyssey. But hold on, because this isn't the same Azula who entered the spirit world. The Azula who once ruled with ruthless precision has returned, yet something is irrevocably changed. Her razor-sharp mind and unmatched bending prowess remain, but a new dimension has emerged, one that's reshaping her very essence. Azula's journey through the spirit world wasn't just a mystical detour, it was a confrontation with her core identity, leaving her transformed in ways even she's struggling to comprehend. Imagine a master strategist suddenly questioning every move, like a chess grandmaster considering the feelings of the pieces. This new Azula faces a diplomatic crisis that would have once been a simple exercise in domination. Picture this. Representatives from warring nations gathered in a tense council chamber, old grievances threatening to ignite into conflict. The old Azula would have manipulated this scenario with surgical precision, but now she hesitates. For the first time, we see Azula grappling not with her abilities, but with the consequences of her actions. It's as if her strategic brilliance, once a razor-sharp blade, is being tempered in the fires of spiritual insight. The result? A new approach to balance that's redefining her role as Avatar. As Azula addresses the council, we witness a fascinating internal struggle. She weighs each word, considering not just political ramifications, but spiritual harmony. Her solution, when it comes, leaves everyone stunned. It's quintessentially Azula in its brilliance, but infused with a depth that reshapes the entire geopolitical landscape. This moment is more than a victory, it's a turning point. Azula doesn't just resolve a conflict, she bridges divides thought unbridgeable. Nations find common ground, and age-old grievances are addressed in unprecedented ways. But don't think for a second that Azula's transformation makes her any less formidable. If anything, this new dimension adds layers to her already complex character. She's still not winning any popularity contests, but there's a depth to her actions that commands a different kind of respect. As we watch these events unfold, it's clear that Azula's journey is far from over. With her prodigious skills now tempered by spiritual growth, she's not just participating in the world's destiny, she's actively shaping it, and the world, it's holding its breath, wondering what this new Avatar Azula will do next. The implications are staggering, and Azula with more power and insight could be a force for unprecedented positive change, or as some fear, an even more formidable threat. After all, Azula with a deeper understanding of balance is still, well, Azula. As we delve deeper into this new chapter, one thing is certain: the Avatar we thought we knew is evolving before our eyes. And the journey ahead? It promises to be nothing short of revolutionary. Imagine Azula as the Avatar, a twist that transforms our understanding of power and growth. This journey from feared princess to conflicted Avatar reveals a profound truth. True strength comes from facing our inner demons. Azula's transformation mirrors the complexity of duty and personal growth, reminding us that even the most powerful have vulnerabilities. Next time you rewatch Avatar, keep your eyes peeled for hints of Azula's destiny hidden in plain sight. What other character arcs might we see in a new light? The best stories always surprise us with what was there all along, inviting us to explore with fresh eyes and newfound curiosity.